up to break it. TVC News, first with breaking news.
This is Business Week, coming to you from our studios here at the nation's commercial capital. I am Frank Komalape. Here's what's coming up in a moment. Organized labor unions have called off the strike to give room for further negotiations, as Minister of Finance says there is no cause for alarm. Plus, the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation says it is set to pay depositors of the liquidated bank following revocation of the license of Heritage Bank PLC. And outside Nigeria, the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has called for tax on profit of fossil fuel companies to help pay for the fight against global warming. These and many more are what to expect on the show today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is Business Week. Let's begin from stories that made headlines in the week. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edu, says there is no cause for alarm on the ongoing negotiations between the Organized Labour and the Tripartite Committee on the new minimum wage. The minister made this known after meeting with President Bola Tinubu at the presidential villa in Abuja on Thursday. This is following President Tinubu's directive on Tuesday asking the finance minister to present the cost implications for a new minimum wage within 2 days. Mr. Edu, along with the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Mr. Atiku Bagudu, presented President Tinubu with the cost implications of the new minimum wage in his office at the presidential villa in Abuja, which is currently being reviewed, awaiting official announcement. Recall, President had also said he was committed to a wage above 60,000 naira, while the TUC and the NLC said they weren't fixated on their 494,000 naira demand. And also in the week, the Central Bank of Nigeria has revoked the license of Heritage Bank PLC with immediate effect. The Apex Bank, in a statement by the Acting Director, Corporate Communications Department, Mrs. Hakama Sidi Ali, said that the action was in accordance with the bank's mandate to promote a sound financial system in Nigeria and in the exercise of its powers under Section 12 of the Banks and Other Financial Act. She added that the board and management of the bank have not been able to improve the bank's financial performance, a situation which constitutes a threat to financial stability. According to her, the CBN took action to strengthen public confidence in the banking system and ensure that the soundness of the financial system is not impaired. And following the announced revocation of the Heritage Bank by the CBN, the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation says it is set to pay depositors of the liquidated bank. The managing director of NDIC disclosed this at a media briefing in Abuja on the liquidation of the bank. He says the total number of depositors in the bank is 2.3 million, with 99% of them having account balances less than 5 million naira. Helen Osamide King's report.
On the 3rd of June, the Central Bank of Nigeria revoked the banking license of Heritage Bank PLC due to the bank's inability to improve its financial performance. The regulator said Heritage Bank, which was nationally licensed, has not improved and has no reasonable prospect of recovery. The NDIC, as part of its mandate, is set to give depositors their money. In this briefing, it said it will not take more than 30 days to pay depositors as stipulated in its acts.
The process is laborious, is highly intense, and probably that is why the act contemplated that we should pay within 30 days. But we are going to pay within 1 week, less than 1 week. For the uninsured, it will be difficult for me to give a time frame. And let me explain why I say so. Yes, they have structures, buildings. We need to advertise, to get bidders, you understand, to determine the winner and then get the payment.
The corporation says it will pay a minimum of 5 million naira insured deposits to each customer of the bank.
If you have 3 accounts, say savings, current, maybe domiciliary or term, what you are going to do is you are going to merge all the 3 accounts because you are one person. Because the coverage, the guarantee is per depositor in a bank. So we are going to do that, after which we now determine the amount that, okay, this is what you are going to pay, whether it is 45 million or below, based on what is there.
NDIC adds that the total bank deposit at Heritage Bank is 650 billion naira, while its loan portfolio stands at over 700 billion naira. He explained that only about 4,000 depositors have above 5 million naira in their accounts. NDIC is established to protect depositors and contribute to the stability of the financial system through effective supervision of insured institutions.
Achieving food security and sustainable agricultural development requires a collective effort and multifaceted approach. This is the position of key players at the forum in Lagos.
Lack of adequate funding, inadequate infrastructure and limited access to modern technology have been identified as major challenges facing the sector. This is why key stakeholders in the sector, including policymakers, industry leaders, farmers, technology innovators, and former President of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, came together to explore ways to drive sustainable growth and development in Nigeria's agricultural landscape.
If I produce 5,000 beds.
One of the highlights of conversations at the event has been the emphasis on forging stronger partnerships and collaborations across the value chain.
Major problem with agriculture is not one. Some people will say yes, security in itself is a big problem. But before there was insecurity, we still had storage and infrastructure problem. For me, collaboration and partnerships is the way forward to dealing with this thing. I think we need to find new ways to deal with old problems. We can't keep doing the same thing.
We do a lot of talk shops, but in terms of actionables, in terms of implementing, in terms of making the impact needed for us to grow the sector and come out of this conundrum of continuous food insecurity, it's something that holistically, as a nation, we need to come together.
Key among the challenges requiring urgent attention is the lack of adequate financing and the underdevelopment of technology innovation in the sector.
The fundamental challenge facing smallholder farmers is low farm productivity. And this is due to the fact that farmers struggle to be able to purchase the quantity and quality of farm inputs to enable them get these high levels of productivity yield.
There's a lot of tech that can be brought into agriculture, which is used abroad, but we need the tech guys to invest and see that viability, bring it in.
The common sentiment echoed here at this event is a shared commitment to transform Nigeria's agricultural sector into a driver of economic growth, food security and social development.
Continuing its campaign to rid the western waterways of smuggling activities, the Western Marine Command of Nigeria Customs Service has intercepted and seized about 17 sacks containing 1,257 loads of cannabis sativa. The illicit consignment, weighed about 609 kilograms, is valued at over 96 million naira. TVC News senior business correspondent Tiffany has more.
As he displayed the sacks of cannabis sativa alongside officers from the command and officials from the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, Controller Paul Bamishaye revealed that intelligence led to the interception of the consignment along the Badagry waterways.
The Western Marine Command of Nigeria Customs Service, in its continued efforts to purge the western waterways of the offensive activities of smuggling, has intercepted and seized 17 sacks containing 1,257 loads of cannabis sativa, marijuana, with a combined weight of 720 kilograms.
In accordance with interagency synergy and collaboration, the sacks of seized cannabis sativa were handed over to the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency.
It's a matter of continuity. As we're handing over to him now, they will continue with their investigation. We have done our own part, which is just interim.
I use this opportunity to commend the controller for this gesture. At least he just took over when he handed this kind exhibit to us, and it will go a long way. We are at our end. We are going to do our thorough investigation.
In addition, Controller Bamishaye displayed over 500 bags of 50 kg foreign parboiled rice impounded from smugglers along the creeks between Nigeria and Benin Republic.
A joint team of officers and men of the command, while on routine patrol along Paco Creek, Badagry waterways, intercepted one wooden boat. A careful examination, however, of the items being conveyed revealed 505 bags of 50-kilogram foreign parboiled rice.
The boats employed as means of conveyance were also impounded.
And outside Nigeria, the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, is calling for a tax on profits of fossil fuel companies to help pay for the fight against global warming. The UN chief said this while delivering a special address at the American Museum of Natural History and Climate Change in New York. The Secretary General reiterated the need to reduce global emissions of carbon dioxide by 9% each year for 1.5 degrees Celsius target to be kept alive. Well, those were some of the biggest stories in the week. Coming up after this break, our focus is on national minimum wage and expectations amid ongoing labor and federal government negotiations. Well, that's a talking point in a moment. Stay with us. Thank you, everyone. If you just join us, this is Business Week coming to you from our studios here, the nation's commercial capital. Let's get into our conversation for today. The labor union and the federal government have been engaging in negotiations to agree on a new minimum wage, with the government offering literally above 60,000 naira. Union workers have been pushing for a higher minimum wage to reflect the rising cost of living and the country's economic growth, while the federal government has been urging them to be patient and consider the country's economic challenges. Well, let's get talking now. I'm joined by the policy analyst and a former chairman, Ikeja District of ICANN, Mr. Olusegun Okwande. He joins us now virtually. Thank you, Mr. Okwande, for your time. Let's begin with the implications of the labor union strike. Well, we saw economic activities disrupted, and of course the TCN shut down, including activities at the airport disrupted. Some analysts have said the nation cannot afford to go through this at this time. What do you suppose is the implication of this on the economy? Let's start from there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Frank, for that question. I think the approach used by the NLC this time around is to actually, correct the impression that the citizen had about them each time they called for strike. But from my own side, they seems to get it wrong, because some of the sectors that they touched on is more of essential commodity that covers every other person, essential services to every citizen that shouldn't have gone that route. Take, for example, the shutting down of TCN at around 2:19 a.m. of that particular day implies that the whole nation was actually put to blackout. And when you look at the provision of electricity, you can imagine somebody who is supposed to be on maybe a test that requires electricity, and look at the increase in the band that most people have actually switched to PHCN. So for that 2 days is quite impactful. So that's the high class set of people. When you now look at the man and woman selling things on the road, whom we claim we are actually advocating the wage increase, which does not affect them, because federal government made us understand that 1.2 million is actually the major people we are agitating for, as against all the other concerns. So you discover that for those 48 hours that we are out of supply, those that are actually making sales of frozen food and some other things need to go to extra mile. And you went to the other length of making sure that there is no access to petroleum. So imagine the wastages that we faced for those 2 days, not to talk of the travelers shutting down of the domestic airport. Thank God that they revert that they did not get to the international. But you can imagine somebody having a connecting flight, even domestically, for an appointment. And I even saw high network people knowing fully well that Monday is a serious-minded thing. I saw a clip from TVC by the TVC Entertainment MD, where she was shut out. You can imagine what you went through of getting to the airport around 5. So I feel that they went to the extreme this time around by, moving into the essential service corridor to debar people of actually traded. And this we have said, at least those of us in the organized private sector, that the agitation from the aspect of the NLC will worsen the situation as against what they are actually advocating for. Because pay rise, as we speak, is not to the favor of any service provider or organized private sector who currently are bleeding based on the high cost of operation for every of these sectors. So for me, it has great impact, that 48 hours before they actually call up the strike. We don't know the strategy they will be putting up after 5 days that they've given to the government. Well, I feel that we should put other people into consideration who this agitation may really not actually be impacted, because for someone like me, I will always say that it's misplacement of priority. Rather than advocating for increase in price, we should be engaging the government in doing other things that will give us better living than, impoverishing the people the more. Because any increase in this, Frank, I'm sure you know the implication that inflation of 33% and food inflation of over 40% will move high rocket above 50%. And it may be something that will be battling with for a very long period of time.
Well, we understand that negotiations are still ongoing between the labor unions and the federal government. As directed by the president, recall the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edo, met with the president in the week to submit his report with regards to the cost implications of the new minimum wage. As we await the final announcement, what are your expectations as regards the outcome?
Yeah, thank you very much, Frank. You see, my expectation is different from what the government is actually playing to. I feel this administration is playing to the gallery, not having a deeper understanding of the implication we are actually going to. And some of us have said it, that NLC needs to get wide consultation on this thing they're actually advocating for. I've read in several areas we pay above 60,000, talk about 75. Some said the minister is even proposing about 105,000. And a lot of analysts has come to say this is just a benchmark. It is not a salary review. And you ask yourself, Frank, as you are, if you are earning, now that the minimum wage is 30,000, and I know so many organized private sector are really not paying 30,000 as minimum wage. So those that are not in the area of working against labor, doing casualization, are paying as low as much as 50,000, 60,000 for their least staff that you can call the office assistants or cleaner. But by the time you raise the benchmark, are you not going to touch those middle and high elites? Because they all buy from the same market. And that's why, for me, I have advocated that rather than the organized labor, engaging government in the increase of wages, can we engage them to activities that can improve the well-being by drastically reducing certain things that are key factor to the increment in some of the costs we're experiencing?
Well, I get your point. I understand the national minimum wage is not just an issue for workers and labor unions, but also for the economy as a whole. On one hand, some are saying that a higher minimum wage can have a positive impact on the economy as it can increase the consumer spending and also boost economic growth. On the other hand, some believe a higher minimum wage can also have negative impact or consequences, such as increased cost and potentially higher inflation. What's your position on these? Where do you pitch your tent?
Yeah, I'm pitching my tent with the school of thought that say when you increase the minimum wage, you're definitely going to go the route of increasing inflation. Let me give you this small analogy. Before now, you have 4 tubers of yam that only very few people can have access to. By the time you increase the minimum wage, that there is so much money in circulation in the hands of very many people, you discover that what few people are actually chasing, more people, times 3 of them, will start chasing the same number of production. Don't forget, we are not producing anything. That's even a negative impact on our path. Because if we have been a productive nation, we would have said that the injection of some of those funds will raise the purchasing power to meet up with the supply that we have. But as we speak, we have even deficits in the area of supply of goods and services that we are providing to the people. So when you have much more money, so demand will definitely outweigh the supply, which in economics, it will increase the price of things. So it makes life more miserable. I can tell you, when minimum wage was increased from 80 to 30,000, you discover that people are much more better when they were earning 80,000 than when it was increased to 30,000. And don't forget, a lot of the government, the private sector struggle to pay this particular money. So someone who is struggling to pay 30,000, even though people will say the political actor is not having the political will to carry that out, considering the kind of life they are living. But I keep saying it, that most of the organized private sector too are splitting. You can imagine if this is done and inflation is on the high side, there will be a retrenchment that will increase the level of unemployment, which in tune has its impact in increasing insecurity. Because when someone is not engaged, with one or two things, you are bound to engage yourself with foreign things that will not be impacting our economy. So I'm of the school of thought that you increase the minimum wage, you are going to impact, on the economy negatively, because inflation will go up, because so much money will be, chasing few goods, which is against the norm of the economy. And that's why we're advocating that we should engage the government more in things that can make the country more productive. If this is done in China, you will say they have influx of goods and services that they are requesting so much money to chase after. And that's why they open their space up to make sure that people, consume some of their products. But here, reverse is the case. We are not producing anything. We are importing them. And we have even shortage of some of those goods and services, which is impacting on us.
Well, let's drive this conversation home right now. The government in the last meeting had offered something about 60,000 naira, which the unions are considering against what they are demanding. But in terms of creating a balance, factoring the current macroeconomic environment into the conversation, what should be the ideal take-home from your standpoint for labor unions?
Okay, thank you very much, Frank. My perspective to it is that we should retain the status quo of 30,000. I know it sounds insane with the current reality we are faced with, but can we have a situation where the government needs to, in the next few months, 1 to 3 months, put up mechanism of how we can reduce our energy cost? And when I mean energy cost, it transcends through petroleum, diesel, and even the power supply in such a way that we can increase the productivity of average industry that we have currently. I'm sure you are aware that a lot of companies are exiting the shore of our nation, and it borders around the cost of the energy cost, which takes significant chunk of the operating cost. So I want a situation where we can engage the government in such a way that some of the promises, they promise us the issue of Dangote refinery coming to start making supply, before the end of last year. I'm key with the issue of energy cost, logistics, what the average woman, you and I, move around with. If we can have a reduction in that cost, take for example, if fuel starts selling for 150 naira, per liter, or even less than 100 naira, you can see the drastic impact that will draw, because what we are facing today that is making this agitation to come up is the high cost of practically everything, even things that do not border around foreign exchange here. That's one. Two, I want a situation where we can engage the monetary and the fiscal policy in such a way that we will make the production and the manufacturing arm of our economy to start growing the more. People are not having the required goods locally, but majorly we import some of these goods. Those days when we used to have the manufacturing, assembling, let me even say assembling, of the vehicle. How can we engage them? We have the steel, Ajakuta Steel, who up till now is really not producing. The Mambila power plant, not even. So a lot of things, government assets are lying fallow, of which I expect that we should start engaging the government, how they can resuscitate some of this thing. Maybe I'll give a little plus on the infrastructure being provided by the Ministry of Works, but how can we do more in such a way that you can have access to other neighboring states who you require their services? And don't forget, the hallmark of all this that we're saying, when we're able to put those things together, is security.
What a good place to leave the conversation. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Olusegun Okwade, former chairman, Ikeja District Society of ICANN. We appreciate you for coming on Business Week.
Thank you very much, Frank. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, and that's our show this week. Thank you for watching. I am...